Billionaire finds ex-wife with secret twin boys after betrayal. Shocking return changes everything. Kale, the young Duke of Belverin, stood alone in the library, cloaked in the flickering glow of the hearth. He was a figure sculpted by war and duty, tall, proud, with eyes like storm clouds and a heart he hadn't allowed to feel in years. Yet tonight, something stirred inside him. His gaze was fixed not on the ancient scrolls, but on a single object laid before him, a faded linen ribbon, pale blue and frayed at the edges. He held it between his fingers as if it might vanish. "She wore this the day I met her," he whispered. His voice trembled as though the memory had reached through the years and wrapped itself around his throat. The door creaked softly behind him. "Your Grace," said the old steward, bowing. "The council waits." Kale didn't move. Let them wait. He closed his eyes and let himself remember. It had been a spring morning 7 years ago. The market below the castle bustled with life. Merchants shouting, children chasing each other, women with baskets brimming with herbs and bread. Kale, dressed in plain clothes and hooded to escape the scrutiny of the court, had wandered into the crowd alone. He had no clear purpose, just a heaviness inside him he could not name. Then he saw her. A young woman knelt beside a sick boy, her hands moving gently over his brow. Her long brown hair glinted like chestnut in the sun, and though her dress was simple and worn, there was grace in the way she moved, in the way her voice wrapped around the child's pain like a lullaby. "Breathe slowly, little one," she murmured. "It's just the fever. We'll calm it with this." She dipped a cloth in cold water, her touch calm and practiced. The boy's mother watched her with eyes full of gratitude. Kale had not meant to stop, but he did. For minutes he stood there as if spellbound. Then, without thinking, he spoke. "You're not from here." The woman looked up, startled. Her eyes met his, green, fierce, and full of life. "I was born not far," she replied carefully. "Why?" He hesitated, suddenly unsure. "I've just never seen someone heal with such gentleness." She tilted her head, studying him. "Are you a soldier?" "No," he answered too quickly. "I mean, not exactly." "Then you must be nobility." He smiled tightly. "Do I look so delicate?" "No," she said, standing, brushing her hands on her apron. "But only nobles hide behind cloaks in markets." Kale laughed. An honest, unguarded laugh that startled even him. "Touché." They said nothing for a moment, just stared at one another as the noise of the market buzzed around them like a distant sea. "I'm Elena," she finally said. "Kale," he answered without thinking. Then, realizing what he'd done, he added quickly, "Just Kale." She nodded. "Well then, just Kale, if you're going to follow me with those curious eyes, at least carry this basket." It was the beginning of something neither of them had words for. Their meetings became frequent, always hidden. Elena taught him to see the world through her eyes, the way plants whispered secrets if you listened, how the wind could be read like poetry. She showed him joy without wealth, peace without power. And Kale, for the first time, allowed someone to touch the aching emptiness he had carried since childhood. "You're not what I expected," Elena told him one night as they lay in the grass beneath the stars. "What did you expect?" he asked, turning toward her. "Someone cold. Someone who only sees the world from a balcony." He smiled faintly. "I was cold, until I met you." She touched his cheek then, a gesture so tender he nearly broke. "Do you ever wish you were born a peasant?" she asked dreamily. "Every day," he whispered. She sat up, alarmed. "Don't say that. You have power, you can protect people." "I don't feel powerful," he said. "I feel trapped, like everything I do is for others, never for myself." She looked at him then, really looked, and her heart softened. "I don't want your title, Kale. I don't want your gold. I know. All I want is to matter to you." "You already do," he said, and he kissed her. That night, beneath the moon and between the soft rustling of the trees, Kale made a silent vow, one he would carry for years to come. "I will love you, no matter the cost." But the cost would be far higher than he imagined. The wind howled outside the library now, snapping Kilian from the memory. The ribbon was clenched in his hand. He turned toward the fire, his jaw tight, his eyes dark. "I still loved you, Elena, even when I hated you." His voice broke, and the room swallowed the confession whole. The steward stepped in again. "My lord," Kilian straightened. "Yes," he said coldly. "Tell them I'm coming." But even as he walked down the stone corridor toward the council chambers, he knew that something inside him had cracked open. A memory had returned. A wound had been touched. And somewhere, deep in the forests of Belverin, the woman he once loved still breathed. She had once held his heart. Kilian stepped through the arched doorway, and the murmurs died instantly. 12 lords, old blood, proud names, sat at the long oaken table, their eyes sharp, some cautious, some resentful. They bowed stiffly as he entered. "Your Grace," Lord Emeron began, rising. "We were discussing the situation in the Northern Territories. Bandits." "Let them burn," Kilian said, his voice low and distant. The room froze. My Lord Emeron frowned. Kilian moved to the head of the table, his movements slow, almost dazed. "Let them burn it all, for all I care." He sat, eyes unfocused. "My Duke," Lord Heaven ventured, clearing his throat. "Is something troubling you?" Kilian didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the table, at the sigil etched into the wood before him, the serpent devouring its own tail, the symbol of his house, a circle of power, a trap with no end. "I once thought I could rule without feeling," he said suddenly, voice barely more than a whisper. "That duty would be enough." The lords exchanged uneasy glances. "But today," he continued, "I saw a child in the market. He looked like me. No one spoke. I saw my own eyes on his face," Kilian whispered, almost to himself. "My mouth, my hair." He was 7-8-inch. Emeron shifted in his seat. "Do you suspect illegitimate?" "No," Kilian snapped, gaze suddenly sharp. "No, not mine. Not that I knew of." He stood again, pacing now. "She never told me," he muttered. "She never even had the chance." The lords looked at one another in silent confusion, but no one dared ask. "I need to leave," Kilian said abruptly. "Leave?" Lord Heaven leaned forward, alarmed. "Your Grace, the treaty with House Veron awaits your seal." "I said I need to leave." He turned, the firelight catching his eyes. Wild, alive, tortured. The chamber fell silent again. Kilian left without another word. The castle stables smelled of leather and damp straw. By the time the moon had risen, Kilian was already riding out through the southern gate, alone, wrapped in a dark cloak. No guards, no retinue, just the cold air on his face, and the image of that boy burned into his mind. The road twisted through the forests he had once hunted in as a boy, now overgrown and wild. Branches clawed at his shoulders, and the hooves of his horse struck roots and stone. But he didn't slow. The memories were chasing him, louder than the wind. "You left her. You didn't even ask. You let them shame her." Each step of the horse pounded the guilt deeper into his chest. And then he reached the place. A small clearing, hidden behind old birch trees, where the cottage once stood. He hadn't been there in years. It had been their place. A secret world built with soft hands and whispered promises. But now the cottage was abandoned. The roof sagged. Ivy curled over the windows. The herbs once planted with care now grew wild and tangled. He dismounted, every step toward the door like walking through his own grave. He pushed it open. Dust swirled in the moonlight. The scent hit him first, lavender, sage, and something older, like memory itself. It clung to the stones. His heart thundered in his ears as he stepped inside. He touched the wooden chair where she once sat, brushing the tangles from her hair. The spot near the hearth where he'd first kissed her, trembling, afraid of his own desire. And then he saw it. On the far wall, carved crudely into the stone, his name, Kilian, carved by her hand. He fell to his knees. "Elena," he breathed. "Why didn't you wait for me?" The silence answered him, cold and merciless. He sat there for what felt like hours, until the sound of twigs snapping outside drew his attention. He rose quickly, eyes narrowing, hand on his blade. A figure appeared through the trees. A boy. The same boy. The one from the market. He wore a simple tunic, patched at the shoulders, and carried a basket of herbs. Killian's breath caught. The boy stopped when he saw him. Eyes widened. Fear flickered across his young face. But then, something changed. He tilted his head, squinting. "Who are you?" the boy asked. Killian stepped forward slowly. "I could ask the same." The boy didn't move. "This is my mother's place. You shouldn't be here." Killian swallowed hard. "And where is your mother?" The boy paused, suspicious. "She's in the village, helping with a birth." Killian nodded. "What's your name, boy?" The answer came without hesitation. "Adrian." A beat passed. "And your father?" The boy frowned, almost offended. "I don't have one." Killian's throat tightened. Adrian turned, clearly deciding the man was no threat. "Wait here," he said bluntly. "She'll come for me soon." And just like that, he walked past him and into the cottage, setting down the basket as if Killian were just another passing traveler. Killian followed slowly, stunned. He looked at the boy, those eyes, those hands, and something in him began to unravel. He sat by the fire across from the child. "Do you know what happened here, Adrian?" he asked quietly. Adrian shrugged. "My mother says this was her sanctuary, before the people in the castle turned on her." Killian looked down. "She said she used to love someone who lived in the tower." The boy didn't look at him when he said it, but his words hung in the air like an accusation. Killian's voice cracked. "Did she tell you his name?" "No," Adrian said. "But she said he broke her heart." Silence. "I think she still cries for him sometimes," the boy added, softer now. Killian turned his face away, shame pressing on his shoulders like a weight he could no longer carry. Outside, the sound of hooves approached. Adrian stood. "She's coming." Killian's heart nearly stopped. He stood too, suddenly afraid. Afraid of her face. Afraid of what she'd say. Afraid she'd turn away. But he had come this far, and he would face her, even if it destroyed him. Then, through the curtain of mist, she appeared. Elena. She rode atop a dappled mare, her cloak billowing like wings behind her. The moonlight caressed her face. Older now, more worn, but not less beautiful. Her hair, once wild and unbound, was braided simply, and her eyes, God's, those eyes, still held the fire he remembered. Only now that fire burned colder, sharper. When she saw him standing at her door, the reins in her hand tightened. Her body tensed. She didn't dismount. She didn't speak. "Elena," Killian said, almost breathless. She blinked once, slowly, then dismounted in silence. Adrian stood in the doorway, eyes wide, watching everything. "Take your brother inside," she said without looking at him. The boy obeyed, though his curiosity radiated in every step. Killian barely noticed him go. His entire being was locked on her. "I came to speak with you," he began. Her laugh was small, almost bitter. 7 years late. "I didn't know," he said. "About the children. About anything. You didn't ask." She pushed past him into the cottage. He followed, hesitant, feeling like a stranger in a world he once belonged to. Inside, the hearth glowed low. Elena moved without looking at him, tending the fire, adding herbs to the boiling pot hanging above it. She moved with the same grace he remembered, but there was no warmth in it now. Only purpose, precision, protection. "Elena," he said again, softer now. "Why didn't you tell me?" She turned. The hurt in her eyes struck him harder than any blade. "You banished me, Killian." His breath caught. "You stood before your court and cast me out. Without a word. Without a question. I thought—" "I know what you thought," she interrupted, voice trembling. "That I was unfaithful. That I betrayed you. You didn't need proof. You just needed to believe." He said nothing. His silence made the walls close in. "I begged for a moment," she whispered. Just a moment. To speak. But you looked at me like I was filth. And I was carrying your sons. Sons? He repeated, as if the word alone could undo the years. Elena, I would have. You would have what? She snapped. Loved them, protected them like you protected me. He looked at the floor, jaw clenched. I lived in fear for months, she said. Alone. Hunted. Branded a traitor. I delivered 2 lives with nothing but blood and prayer. Tears filled her eyes, but none fell. I held them in my arms and swore they'd never know what it was to be cast aside. Kilian stepped forward. Let me see them. Truly. You've already seen one, she said. Adrian is headstrong. Fierce. So much like you it scares me. And the other, Kale, she said quietly. He's gentle. Sickly sometimes. But he listens to the world. He sees things most men never do. A silence settled. I've missed everything, Kilian said. Yes, Elena replied. You did. He reached for her hand. She pulled away. I'm not that girl anymore, Kilian, she said, voice shaking. The one who waited by the windowsill hoping you'd climb the hill again. She died with the first snow the year you banished me. His hand dropped. And yet you carved my name into the stone, he said softly. She froze. His eyes locked with hers. I saw it, he continued, at the hearth. She looked away, the fire's glow brushing her cheek. I don't know why I did that, she whispered. Maybe I hated myself for still loving you. His voice cracked. Do you? I don't know. The door creaked. 2 small figures peeked through. Adrian and another boy, smaller, with paler skin and eyes wide with curiosity and fear. Kale. Kilian turned, heart racing. The child stepped closer behind his brother, clutching his hand. Is he the man from your stories? Kale asked quietly. Elena went still. What stories? Kilian asked gently. Kale looked up. The ones where the prince gets lost in his castle and forgets how to find the girl again. Kilian sank to one knee, trembling. I forgot, he whispered. I forgot everything that mattered. Kale stepped back. Adrian stood in front of him protectively. Don't hurt her, he said, glaring at Kilian. We don't need you. I won't, Kilian said, eyes filling. I swear it on my life. He looked at Elena. I don't want to take them from you, or you from them. I just want to be near. If you'll let me. Elena stared at him for a long time. The boys clung to each other. The fire cracked. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. Then finally she spoke. I don't forgive you, she said. His heart dropped. But I haven't forgotten you either. That somehow hurt more. I'll sleep outside tonight, he said. By the door. She gave a small nod. As he stepped out into the night, wrapping his cloak around him, the cold seeped into his bones. But he didn't mind, because for the first time in 7 years he wasn't running away. He was waiting and hoping that she might one day open the door, not out of necessity, but because her heart remembered how to beat for him again. Inside, the faint murmurs of Elena's voice reached his ears. She was likely singing a lullaby, maybe to calm Kale or distract Adrian's questions. He closed his eyes and let himself drift into the sound, even if it wasn't meant for him. Sleep now, child of stars and stone. Let the wind sing soft, you're not alone. The voice broke him. He swallowed a sob and pressed his forehead to the wood behind him. How had he been so blind? How had he believed so quickly the past clawed at him? The courtroom, the way she had been dragged before him, eyes swollen with tears and dirt, the whispers of betrayal echoing through the marble halls. Rodrik's smug face as he presented the evidence. And Kilian, standing there like a fool, heart burning with rage, not once asking her to speak, not once letting her explain. He remembered her face in that moment. Not pleading, not weeping, just shattered. You turned your back before I said a word, her voice had said only hours ago. Now those words cut like 1,000 blades. He didn't sleep. He didn't want to. When the dawn finally crept over the hills, pale and trembling, Kilian's eyes were red with exhaustion. His cloak was soaked with dew. His hands trembled slightly as he stood. The door creaked behind him. Elena stepped out, wrapped in a thin shawl, her face unreadable. She said nothing at first, just looked at him. "You stayed," she murmured. "I said I would." He didn't smile. He couldn't. Her gaze lingered a moment longer. Then she turned toward the woods. "Come," she said. "You can walk with me." They moved quietly, their steps soft on the damp earth. Mist still hugged the ground. Kilian followed her through the tall grasses until they reached a field filled with wildflowers and stones. Markers. Graves. She knelt before one. It was small, nearly hidden by lavender. Kilian's breath caught. "I lost a child too," she said quietly. "There were 3. He stepped closer, reverently, and knelt beside her. "Kale almost didn't make it," she continued, brushing dirt from the carved letters. "He was so small, but it was the girl. She never cried. I buried her here." His throat tightened. "I should have—" "No," she said firmly, not looking at him. "You don't get to say that now." He nodded, silent. They stayed there, side by side, the weight of the unspoken filling the air around them. After a while, she rose. "The village will be waking. I have mouths to tend, wounds to dress. You can come, but you speak only if spoken to." Kilian gave a soft, pained smile. "That sounds fair." She led him to a small cluster of homes hidden between the hills. Children darted through alleyways, barefoot and laughing. Men hauled water from a well, while women waved from open windows, baking or weaving. These were not people who bowed to him, not people who feared his crest. They were Elena's people, and they looked at him with suspicion. "Is that the Duke?" someone whispered. "The one who cast her out?" Elena walked ahead, ignoring them. Kilian kept his head low. Inside the small infirmary, she moved with expert hands, grinding herbs, boiling roots, stitching a gash in a boy's leg while Kilian watched in silence. "You really became a healer," he said softly, admiring the way she tied the knot. "I always was," she replied. "You just never stayed long enough to see it." He lowered his eyes. "I wanted to. I thought I'd have time." She didn't answer. The silence said enough. Then the door burst open. A young man, flushed and breathless, stumbled in. "Elena," he gasped. "He's back. Lord Rodrik. He's come to the village square with soldiers." She froze. Kilian stood immediately. "Rodrik here," the young man nodded. "He demands to see Elena. Says he's come to finish what was started." Kilian's blood turned to ice. Elena's eyes met his, and for the first time, fear flickered in her expression. "You need to leave," she whispered. "No, this isn't your fight anymore. I made it that way," he said, "and now I'll unmake it." But she was already moving, grabbing her cloak, pushing past him. "Elena, you can follow. But if he lays a hand on my children," her voice cracked, "I will end him myself." They rushed into the growing crowd. At the center of the square on horseback was Rodrik. He hadn't changed, still smug, still dressed in fine black leather and crimson. His eyes swept the people like they were insects. "Where is the witch?" he demanded. "Which?" Kilian growled as he stepped forward. Rodrik's eyes widened in mock surprise. "Brother, how kind of you to join us." The soldiers stiffened. Elena stepped beside Kilian, pulling Adrian and Kale behind her as the villagers formed a protective half-circle. "What are you doing here?" Rodrik, Kilian's voice was low, steady. "Finishing what you started," he sneered. The exile wasn't enough. Was it letting her breed bastards and spread lies? Kilian drew his sword in one smooth motion. The village gasped. "Say another word," he said, eyes blazing, "and I will cut it from your mouth." Rodrik smirked. "So it's true. They are yours." Kilian stepped closer. "I am their father, and she is under my protection now, as she always should have been." Rodrik's face twisted. "You gave up your right to rule the moment you knelt to her. You've gone soft." "I haven't gone soft," Kilian said. "I've woken up." Rodrik drew his blade. Kilian raised his own. and the village held its breath. Rodrik grinned, his blade flashing in the morning sun. "You've lost your edge, Kilian. 7 years playing the noble lord made you soft." Kilian parried the next blow, sweat already slicking his brow. "And 7 years in the shadows made you a snake." Their swords locked, faces inches apart. Rodrik's smile faded, his voice dropping to a hiss. "She poisoned you, just like she did our court. Just like she did father." Kilian's blade twisted, forcing his brother back with a grunt. "You always envied what you couldn't control." He struck again, high, then low, each swing carrying the weight of years lost, of trust shattered. The villagers stood frozen, wide-eyed. Elena held her sons close, shielding them with her arms, her lips trembling, her heart thudding against her ribs like a caged bird. Kale clutched her sleeve. "Is he going to die?" She couldn't answer. Blood sang in Kilian's ears. Every step, every swing was blurred with memory. Elena's face the day he cast her out, her voice as she begged to speak, the ribbon she left behind. He fought not just Rodrik's blade, but the man he used to be. Rodrik drove him back, swinging wide. "You were a fool to believe her. You always were the weaker son." "Maybe," Kilian said, dodging, breathing hard, "but even a weak man can make a stand." Rodrik lunged. Kilian twisted aside. Their blades scraped again. Sparks flew. Then a misstep. Rodrik's foot caught a stone. He stumbled. Kilian moved before thinking. His blade pressed to his brother's throat. The square held its breath. Rodrik snarled, his chest heaving. "Do it!" Kilian's hand trembled. He could feel the pulse beneath the steel. "Strike me down like father would have." "You're not worth it," Kilian whispered. He lowered the sword. "I won't become what you are." Rodrik laughed bitterly. Still the coward. But the insult rang hollow now. The crowd saw him, not a noble warrior, but a bitter, broken man. "Leave this place," Kilian said. "And if you ever threaten them again, I won't spare you next time." He turned his back. "Fool," Rodrik spat. "You think they'll forgive you, that she will?" Kilian didn't answer. He walked to Elena, his eyes never leaving hers. Rodrik's curses faded as he mounted his horse and rode off in a fury of hooves and dust. Elena's face was pale, tight with tension. The boys clung to her. He stood before her, bleeding, bruised, but standing. "I'm sorry," he said, voice rough, "for everything, for believing him, for not listening, for not protecting you." She looked at him for a long moment. "I didn't need you to be perfect," she said. "I just needed you to choose me." His chest caved inward. "I'm choosing you now." She looked away. "It's not that simple." He nodded. "I know." He turned to Kale and Adrian. Kneeling, he met their eyes. "I don't expect anything from you. I can't undo the years I missed. But if you'll have me, I'd like to try." Kale looked at Adrian, then at Elena. She didn't speak. Kale reached forward, small, hesitant fingers brushing Kilian's bloodied hand. "I don't remember you," he said softly, "but you looked scared. Like us." Kilian's breath hitched. "I was." Elena stepped forward. "He needs rest." Kilian nodded, rising slowly, grimacing at the pain in his side. "I'll sleep in the stables." "You'll sleep in the healer's hut," she said, already walking. "You're wounded." He followed her without a word. Later that night, he lay on a straw mattress, bandages wrapped tightly around his ribs. Lantern light flickered on the wooden walls. Through the crack in the door, he could see Kale asleep by the fire, curled beneath a blanket. Adrian stood by the threshold, arms crossed. "You let him go," the boy said quietly. Kilian didn't answer at first. "I did." "Why?" "Because your mother has seen enough blood. And so have you." Adrian looked at him, really looked. "My mother cries when no one's looking." "I know." "She still loved you," Adrian said, "even when she hated you." Kilian closed his eyes. "I hope one day she won't have to hate me anymore." A silence stretched between them. "Then I'll watch the door," Adrian said, turning. Kilian opened his eyes. Thank you. He drifted into sleep, pain lancing through his body, but something softer warming his chest. Hope, not forgiveness. Not yet, but hope. A soft knock tapped at the wooden door. Before he could answer, it creaked open and Elena stepped inside. She carried a bowl of warm water and clean cloths. Her expression was unreadable, guarded as always now. But there was no fire in her eyes today, just quiet exhaustion. I need to change your bandages, she said. He sat up slowly, eyes not leaving her. You don't have to. I do, she said, setting the bowl down. Because if I don't, the wound will fester. He looked away. So it's duty. It's survival, she corrected. She knelt beside him, hands moving with practiced care. She unwrapped the old dressing, eyes scanning the bruised skin and the crimson seeping through the cloth. You heal slower than you used to, she muttered. I carry more weight than I used to. She paused, then dipped the cloth in the water and pressed it gently to his ribs. He flinched but said nothing. The silence between them was different now. Not icy, but heavy, dense with things unsaid. Elena, he breathed. I see them, you know. The boys. I see what I missed. She didn't look at him. It wasn't just the boys. I know. His voice cracked. I missed you. A long pause. She pressed a fresh dressing to his wound, slower this time. I waited for you, she whispered. I told myself that you'd come, that the man I loved couldn't disappear like that. He turned toward her, his voice rough. I didn't disappear. I broke. I shattered. She finally looked up. You shattered me, Kilian. The words hit him harder than any sword ever had. I walked through fire for you, she said, her voice trembling now, almost inaudible. I buried our daughter alone. I stitched my own body back together. And when the snow fell, I whispered your name like a prayer I was too ashamed to believe in. His throat tightened. I didn't know. Gods, Elena, I didn't know. You didn't ask. Her voice rang through the hut, sharp and shaking. She turned her face away, her shoulders rising and falling with ragged breaths. Outside, voices called. The village was waking, but in that little hut, time seemed to stop. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. I can't rewrite what I did, he said. I would tear the years apart if I could, pull the lies from the walls of that cursed court, drag Rodrik to the gallows with my own hands, but I can't. She looked down at their hands. But if you let me, he whispered, I'll spend whatever time I have left rebuilding what I destroyed. She didn't speak, just stared at their joined hands. Then Kale's sick again. The shift in her voice cut through him. How bad, he asked. He's been hiding it, she said. But he doesn't eat much. Sleeps too long. The herbs aren't working. I'll get a healer, Kilian said quickly. From the capital. The best. And what will they say when they find a bastard child living in the woods? He flinched. He's not a bastard. To the world, he is. He looked at her, fire flickering in his eyes. Then let me change that. Her eyes met his. I will name them, he said, breath shaking. Publicly, before the lords, before the people, Adrian and Kale, my sons. That would make them targets, she said bitterly. Do you understand what that means for them, for us? I do, he said. And I don't care. Elena stood, folding the cloth slowly. Her hands trembled. I can't let you walk back into our lives and tear everything apart again. Not if you leave later. Not if you change your mind. I won't. You say that now. I say that now, he said. Because now is all I have. You don't owe me trust. But if there's any part of you that still believes in me... He stood slowly, holding his side. Let me prove myself. Elena stared at him, then turned away. I need to check on Kale. She left the hut without another word. Kilian stood in the quiet, breath ragged, heart bruised. He hadn't lost her again. Not yet. He didn't blame them. He wandered toward the cottage, driven by something restless inside him. Every footstep felt fragile, like one wrong word could crack the ground beneath him. When he reached the door, it was ajar. He pushed it gently, Inside, Elena sat by Kale's bedside. The boy was pale, his skin glistening with sweat. A damp cloth rested on his forehead, and his chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. His tiny fingers curled around his mother's. Elena didn't turn when Kilian entered. "She says it's just a fever," Adrian whispered, sitting by the fire, arms wrapped tightly around his knees. "But she looks scared when she thinks we're not looking." Kilian's throat tightened. He approached slowly, kneeling beside the bed. The sight of Kale in that state, so small, so still, pierced him deeper than any blade had. "Kale," he said softly, brushing the boy's hair back. "It's me. I'm here now." Kale stirred faintly, lips barely parting. "Mama? I'm here. Baby?" Elena whispered, leaning over to kiss his temple. "I'm here. I'm cold." Elena's face crumpled, just for a moment. Then she reached for another blanket, tucking it gently around him. "He needs more than herbs," she murmured. "Let me go to the capital," Kilian said. "There are healers there with access to medicine you don't have here. I'll bring one back." Elena didn't look at him. "And if they ask why you're bringing a royal physician to a village child, I'll tell them the truth. That he's yours, yes." She turned then, eyes burning. "And what happens when the court hears that their precious duke fathered twin sons with a woman they once called a traitor? What happens when they come for him? Not to save him, but to use him. I'll protect them." "You couldn't even protect me." He recoiled. She immediately closed her eyes, guilt flashing across her face. "I didn't mean—" "You did," he said softly. "And you're right." They sat in silence for a moment. The fire crackled. Kale whimpered, and Adrian stood, pacing nervously. "I'll go tonight," Kilian said. Elena shook her head. "The roads are crawling with Rodrik's men. He knows he lost ground yesterday. He won't rest." Kilian's jaw clenched. "Then I'll go through the forest paths. That could take days. I'll ride fast." Elena stared at him. "And if you don't come back," he didn't blink. "Then I'll die trying." A silence passed between them. Adrian broke it. "If he's telling the truth, then let him go." Elena turned sharply. "Adrian, I'm not stupid," he said. "I've seen him. He fights like someone who's already lost everything. Maybe he did. Maybe we all did." He looked at Kilian. "But if you're going to leave, don't come back empty-handed." Kilian stood. His ribs screamed in protest, but he ignored the pain. "I'll ride now, before the fog lifts." He looked at Elena once more. She didn't stop him. She didn't plead. She just looked down at Kale's face and whispered something only a mother could say. As Kilian left the cottage, he found his old horse saddled and waiting near the edge of the trees. A soft voice called from behind. "Wait, Elena." She approached, holding a leather pouch. "Wolfsbane," she said, handing it to him. "And frostroot, in case you get wounded." Their fingers touched. She didn't pull away. "For Kale," she said. He nodded. "For all of you." Then he turned, mounted, and rode into the mist. She watched him until he vanished into the trees. And as the cold wind picked up, she felt the stirring of something she had buried for years. Not forgiveness, but the first whisper of it. And the hope that maybe, just maybe, he would return in time. The path was overgrown, barely visible. An old hunter's trail he remembered from childhood, now forgotten by most. It wound between ancient trees and narrow ravines, thick with fog. He didn't slow. Twice he nearly lost his grip on the reins. Once, his horse stumbled over a root, and he barely stayed in the saddle. But he pressed on. Guilt was a fire in his chest, pushing him harder than duty ever had. "Please hold on," he whispered into the wind. "Just hold on." The forest began to thin by twilight, the scent of pine giving way to chimney smoke. In the distance, stone towers pierced the sky, the edge of the capital. But something felt wrong. As he slowed near the road that led to the city gates, Kilian caught the shimmer of steel in the shadows. Too late. A crossbow bolt hissed past his ear. Another thudded into a tree behind him. He pulled his horse hard and veered into the side path, but they were already on him. 5 men, cloaked in Rodrik's colors, blades drawn. "You ride fast, your grace," one of them sneered as they emerged from the trees. "But not fast enough." "I don't have time for this," Kilian growled, drawing his sword. Another man chuckled. "He still thinks he commands time. How quaint." Kilian dismounted slowly, putting himself between the men and his horse. He could feel the tremor in his ribs where the wound throbbed, but he didn't let it show. "If you want me," he said, steady and cold, "come take me." They rushed him. The first blade clanged against his. Kilian pivoted, slashed low, and brought the hilt up into the man's jaw. He dropped. The second lunged. Kilian spun, barely deflecting the thrust, but the third came in fast behind. His sword grazed Kilian's arm, slicing through the leather. He gritted his teeth, turned his weight into the movement, and stabbed. Another down, but blood ran from his sleeve now. The world spun slightly. Still he moved, parried, blocked, struck again. Only one remained now, taller, leaner, with a cruel grin and careful eyes. He circled, sword raised, watching Kilian breathe harder with every step. "You look tired, Duke," he said. "Maybe you should rest. Let the boy die." Kilian surged forward with a roar, fury blinding the pain. He feinted left, then struck from the right. Steel met flesh. The man dropped, clutching his side, gasping. Kilian stumbled, falling to one knee. Blood soaked his sleeve, dripping into the soil. His vision blurred at the edges, but the road was open. He forced himself up, staggered back to his horse, and climbed into the saddle with a strangled groan. Not now, he told his body. Not yet. The gates of the capital loomed ahead. The hall of the royal healer smelled of oils, ink, and crushed herbs. Kilian stood before the head physician, bloodied and shaking. "Lord Kilian," the man's eyes widened. "What in God's name?" "There's a child," Kilian rasped. 7 years old, pale, thin, fevered for days. His breathing is shallow. "I need you to come with me." The physician stepped back. "Where is he?" "A village near the forest of Ellenford. 2 days' ride." "That far?" the man said, uncertain. "Your Grace, I cannot leave without the Queen's notice." "I am the notice." Kilian leaned forward, his voice raw, shaking from both pain and desperation. "That boy is mine." The room stilled. "I abandoned his mother. I abandoned him. And now he's dying. You don't get to hesitate." The physician blinked, then turned to his apprentice. "Pack everything. Tinctures, fever drafts, traveling herbs, bandages." Kilian let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. But his knees buckled. "Lord Kilian." He caught himself against the wall, breath ragged. The physician was beside him in an instant. "You're bleeding too much. You've reopened the wound." "I'll live," Kilian gasped. "Just get to him." "I'll go ahead," the healer said. "My apprentice will ride with you. You'll slow us down like this." Kilian nodded, barely able to stand. The healer turned, already barking orders. "And send word to the Queen's court the Duke rides under royal purpose. If anyone tries to stop him, they answer to the crown." Kilian gripped the doorway as the world spun around him. Outside, the night wind howled like it knew something none of them did. And far away, in a tiny cottage wrapped in fog, a child cried out in his sleep, his fever deepening, his body weakening. Elena held him close, eyes burning, whispering his name like a prayer. "Come back," she thought. "Please, come back in time." And somewhere, between pain and promise, Kilian swore he would, even if it cost him everything. Elena stood in the doorway, her shawl soaked through, her hair clinging to her face. She had seen the rider coming. When the healer dismounted, she didn't wait for questions. "Come," she said, voice brittle with exhaustion. "He's worse." Inside, Kale lay still beneath layers of blankets, his skin damp, his breath barely audible. Elena knelt beside him, her hand trembling over his chest. The healer moved quickly, professionally, already pulling tools from his satchel. When did the fever break last? It hasn't, she whispered. He checked the boy's pulse, peeled back his eyelids, pressed fingers to his neck. His frown deepened with every second. His lungs are tightening, he muttered. He's not drawing enough breath. Will he make it? Adrian asked from the corner. His voice was a thread. The healer didn't answer. Elena, the healer said gently, I need water, boiled, now. She ran to the hearth, grabbing the pot, her hands shaking. Adrian moved to her side. Mama? Get more blankets, she said quickly. Warm ones, and stoke the fire. We can't let him get colder. He obeyed without question. As she poured water into the bowl, the door slammed open behind her. She turned, heart thundering. And there he was, Kilian, soaked to the bone, pale as ash, blood staining through his cloak. He leaned on the frame, barely upright, his breathing ragged. Elena rushed to him. You're bleeding. I made it, he rasped. Healer came. She caught him before he fell. Stupid man, she whispered, guiding him to a stool. You're worse than when you left. But her voice cracked, betraying her relief. He gripped her wrist. Is he? He's holding on, she said. But barely. Kilian looked past her, eyes locking on Kale's still form. His heart twisted. He had pictured his sons so many times since returning, but never like this. So small, so still. He rose, staggering toward the bed, sinking to his knees beside it. Kale's eyelids fluttered at the sound, barely conscious. Papa! The word shattered something inside him. I'm here, Kilian whispered, brushing the damp curls from his son's forehead. I'm here, Kale. I'm not going anywhere. Kale tried to smile, but it barely formed. I'm tired. I know, but you're strong. You're braver than I ever was. Elena moved behind them, her hand on Kilian's shoulder, grounding him. The healer returned with a vial, kneeling quickly. This will help ease his lungs, he said. But it's not enough on its own. He needs rest, warmth, constant care. We'll give it, Elena said immediately. No distractions, the healer warned. No stress, no sharp emotions. He glanced toward Kilian. His presence could be both medicine or poison. I'll be quiet, Kilian said. I'll stay. You need to rest too, Elena said, voice gentler now. You're bleeding through your bandages. I'm fine. You're not. But I don't have the strength to argue. She handed him a dry cloth. Sit. Watch over him. Just don't die in my house, Kilian. His eyes found hers. For the first time, there was something close to a smile between them. A truce. Temporary, but real. He sat by Kale's side, never letting go of the boy's hand. The hours crawled. Rain drummed against the roof like a heartbeat. Kale slipped in and out of sleep, whimpering occasionally, his body trembling. Elena moved like a ghost around the room, boiling herbs, wiping sweat, murmuring old prayers beneath her breath. Kilian didn't sleep. He watched his son breathe, watched the lines of Elena's face. He remembered the fire in her eyes when she laughed, the way she looked at him before the world pulled them apart. And for the first time since he returned, he truly felt afraid. Not of failure, but of losing them all over again. Not to his mistake, but to something even he couldn't fight. Morning came. Kale stirred with a raspy cough, his eyes opening slowly. Mama, he whispered. Elena was there in a heartbeat. I'm here, my love. She didn't argue. She simply nodded, already wrapping Kale in another blanket and placing a soft kiss on his brow. Adrian stayed beside his brother, eyes fierce. I'll protect him. Kilian placed a hand on his shoulder. You already are. They stepped outside. The soldiers stood at the edge of the village, their horses slick with mud. 5 men armored lightly, but their hands rested on the hilts of their swords. One dismounted and stepped forward, tall, lean, with sharp eyes and a voice too smooth. My lord Kilian, he said, bowing mockingly. Word reached us that you were in poor health. We came to ensure your safety. "And what concern is my health to Rodrik?" Kilian asked coldly. "Only that you not overextend yourself," the man said. "Politics requires strength." Kilian moved closer. "You're here to assess whether I'm fit to protect what's mine." The man smiled faintly. "Is it yours? There are rumors. A healer's cottage, a woman once disgraced, twin sons, some say. Very compelling stories." Elena stepped up beside Kilian, head held high. "If you have something to say, say it." The man's eyes flicked to her, then back to Kilian. "We're merely concerned that a former traitor might be influencing decisions beyond her station." Kilian's hand went to his sword. "She is no traitor," he said, voice quiet but deadly. "And if another word like that leaves your mouth, I will return it to your master with steel." The man didn't flinch. "Then perhaps a demonstration of your loyalty to the court is in order. Bring the children to the capital. Let the council assess the legitimacy of your claims." "They're not claims," Kilian said. "They're my sons." "Then prove it." The challenge hung in the air. Elena stiffened beside him. "You want to drag 2 children before a den of wolves?" she asked. The man raised a brow. "The law is clear. Lineage must be confirmed or denied." Kilian stepped forward. "You will return to Rodrik," he said, each word heavy. "And you will tell him this if he so much as sends another boot across these borders. I will ride to the capital myself, and this time I won't stop at words." The man's smile thinned. "As you wish, but know this: the court is watching, and they are very good at waiting." He mounted his horse again, turning with the rest. Kilian didn't lower his hand from the hilt until they were gone. Elena exhaled shakily. "This isn't over," she said. "No," Kilian replied. "It's just beginning." He turned to her. "We'll leave tomorrow." Her eyes widened. "What, to the capital?" he said. "With Kale and Adrian. If I keep them hidden, they'll always be hunted. But if I bring them into the light, if I name them, then they cannot be touched. They'll challenge you. I know. They'll twist every word. I know." She looked at him, truly looked. "You'd risk everything." He nodded. "I already did, and I lost. I won't lose again." A long silence passed. Then Elena whispered, "If we do this, we do it together." Kilian turned toward her, something raw and unguarded in his eyes. "Yes, together." No one spoke for a long time. Only the soft rhythm of hooves on wet soil filled the silence. Kilian looked down at Kale, whose head rested against his chest, small hands clinging to his cloak. "Are you warm enough?" The boy nodded weakly. "I like the horse. It smells like hay and rain." Kilian smiled. "You're braver than I was at your age." Kale looked up at him. "You were scared all the time," Kilian admitted. "But I learned something." "What?" "That being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you ride anyway." Kale smiled, then drifted back into sleep. Behind him, Elena watched them in silence, her heart heavy with 1,000 emotions she couldn't name. Watching Kilian cradle their son like that, gently, protectively, stirred something inside her she hadn't felt in years. But still, doubt clung to her like frost. When they stopped near a stream to water the horses, she approached him while Adrian stood watch with the healer's apprentice. "You know what they'll say," she murmured. "They'll say I seduced you, lied to you, that I bore bastards and claimed them royal." "I know," Kilian said, "and I'll answer every word with truth. They'll call for blood." "Then let them call," he said. "I won't let fear decide for me again." She hesitated. "And if they demand proof, they'll ask for things we can't give. Dates, witnesses. They'll twist the silence into guilt." Kilian met her eyes. "Then I'll give them a voice louder than any lie." Elena stepped back, searching his face. "Why now?" she asked. "Why not years ago?" He took a long breath. "Because I didn't know what it meant to have something worth protecting. Not until I nearly lost everything." She looked away. "You hurt me. I'll carry that until my last breath," he said. "And what if they turn against you, strip your title, name you traitor for standing by me? I'll walk away from every crown, every stone, every sword, If it means I don't lose you again. The wind picked up, brushing her hair across her face. She didn't answer, but she didn't step away either. They rode through the hills by midday, the towers of the capital slowly appearing in the distance, dark against the horizon like watching eyes. Kale stirred, rubbing his eyes. Is that where the kings live? Yes, Kilian said. And where people will hear your name. Do they know about me? Not yet, Kilian whispered, but they will. As they approached the outer gate, 2 guards crossed their spears. Halt! State your name and purpose. Kilian dismounted, gently handing Kale to Elena before stepping forward. His cloak was heavy with travel, his boots coated in mud. But he stood tall. I am Kilian of Belverin, Duke of the Northern Marches. I request immediate counsel with the royal court. The guards exchanged glances. Your Grace, you were not expected. I never am, he said. Send word. Tell them I have returned, and I bring blood that bears my name. They hesitated a second longer, then opened the gates. Inside the city walls, crowds moved like rivers. Merchants shouting, carriages rattling, noble women glancing at the dusty riders with veiled curiosity. Whispers started before they reached the palace steps. That's the Duke. Who's the woman? Are those his children? Is that her, the healer from the old scandal? Elena kept her head high, Kale resting quietly in her arms. Adrian walked close, eyes sharp, every muscle in his small body tense. They entered the stone court with heavy steps. And at the far end, upon the raised dais, sat the royal regent and the high council. 12 figures cloaked in velvet and iron, with eyes like glass. Kilian stepped forward, voice steady. I stand before you not to plead, but to declare, he said. These are my sons, born of a union you called betrayal, but which I now call truth. The council stirred. You come unannounced, one said coldly, and bring the woman you once cast out as criminal. I was wrong, Kilian said. You were wrong, and I will see it corrected, or I will see this court fall. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The regent leaned forward. Do you understand the gravity of your words, Lord Kilian? I understand the cost of silence, he replied, and I've paid it in full. The regent's gaze shifted to Elena, then to the children. They will need to be examined, he said slowly. Witnesses called. The case reopened. Let it, Kilian said. Let every lie rise to the surface, and I will stand in the fire to burn them away. Elena closed her eyes briefly. She could feel the shift in the room. A storm had begun, but this time, they were standing in it together, and neither of them would run. Kilian stood in the center, flanked by Elena on his right and Adrian on his left. Kale sat quietly on a cushioned bench nearby, watched over by the healer's apprentice. He had grown stronger in the last few days, but still looked so small beneath the towering gaze of the court. Lord Veller, the oldest of the council, finally broke the silence. His voice echoed coldly through the marble hall. You claim these children as your heirs, yet you offer no proof beyond your word and the presence of a woman whose reputation is stained. Elena's spine straightened, her jaw tightening. She did not look away. I offer more than my word, Kilian replied, his voice like tempered steel. I offer the truth. One I was too blind to defend years ago. Truth, a younger lord scoffed. The truth is whatever a council declares it to be. You once cast this woman aside. Why should we believe your change of heart is anything but convenience? Because I saw what my silence did, Kilian said. I watched the boy I never knew fight for breath. I stood beside a grave that never should have been dug. I carry the weight of a daughter I will never meet. Gasps rippled quietly across the gallery behind them. Kilian stepped forward. You call me Duke, but what is a title to a father who failed his family? He turned, looking back at Kale. I would give up every name I have for one whispered word from that boy. I would trade every inch of land, every banner, just to hear him laugh without coughing again. Lord Veller folded his hands. A noble confession, my lord, but sentiment does not validate blood. Then test it, Kilian snapped. You want evidence, take it. Test the blood. Summon every scribe, every healer. Let them see what I already know. Veller arched a brow. Do you submit your sons for royal verification? Elena's breath caught. Kilian turned to her. I would never force it. Not without your word. She searched his eyes. I've lived in shadows long enough, she said finally. Let them see. Let them all see. Kale tilted his head. Does it hurt? No. The healer answered gently, already approaching with a slender needle. Just a pinch, little one. Kale looked to Kilian. Will you be here? I'm not going anywhere, Kilian said. The boy nodded. Then I'm not scared. The blood was taken. A single drop from each child. A vial from Kilian. The physician carried them with reverence toward the side chamber, flanked by scribes. It would take hours. They were escorted to a waiting hall, where the air felt thicker than before. Elena sat with Kale on her lap, stroking his hair. Adrian paced restlessly, his eyes flicking to the door every few seconds. Kilian stood by the window watching the capital below. People moved like ants, unaware of the storm circling above them. Elena's voice was soft. What if they use this against us? They will, he said. But I won't bend this time. She stood, Kale dozing on her shoulder. You've already risked everything. He turned. You are everything. Her eyes searched his face again. Not cold this time. Not guarded. Just wondering if she could believe him. Adrian stopped pacing. A knock. Page entered, bowing. The council requests your return. Back in the chamber, the physician stood before the council, scroll in hand. Lord Veller motioned. Speak. The man cleared his throat. The blood analysis is complete. The children share markers consistent with direct paternal lineage to Lord Kilian of Belverin. A wave of sound crashed through the chamber. A few lords whispered urgently among themselves. Lord Veller raised a hand. Then it is settled, he said. By the old laws, these children are of noble blood. As such, they are entitled to protection, inheritance, and title, should their father maintain his status. A pause. But the court is not finished. Kilian's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Lord Veller's gaze darkened. There is one who contests your claim, not to your blood, but to your right to restore this woman's name. The doors opened again. Rodrik entered, clean, composed, cloaked in black and gold. The room froze. I return not as a traitor, he said, but as a witness. Elena's hand instinctively moved to Kale's shoulder. I was there the day she was cast out, Rodrik continued, and I carry knowledge this court should not ignore. Kilian stepped forward, voice ice. You come to twist truth again. I come to finish what was started, Rodrik said, because blood alone does not make one worthy, and I will not stand by while our noble house is tarnished by. Kilian didn't let him finish. He drew his blade and threw it at the ground before the council. It clanged against the stone with the sound of a death bell. Then name your challenge, he said, stepping toward his brother. Trial by steel. Trial by truth. The court gasped. Rodrik smiled. Agreed. Rain had begun again, soft and slow, misting the red dirt with silver. Kilian stood at the center of the ring, his sword unsheathed, his jaw tight. Across from him, Rodrik stretched his arms, rolling his neck, the same smug smile carved into his face. His blade gleamed in the wet morning light, polished, sharp, hungry. You shouldn't have come back, Rodrik said, his voice low, too calm. You were better off living with your ghosts. Kilian didn't answer. His eyes found the balcony above where Elena stood with Kale in her arms and Adrian at her side. She watched without moving, her hands white from gripping the railing, eyes locked on him. He gave her a single nod. And then the horn sounded. Rodrik struck first, a lunge meant to test, not kill. Kilian stepped aside, letting the steel pass just inches from his ribs, the wind from it brushing his cloak. You've aged poorly, Rodrik muttered. You bleed like a peasant now. Kilian struck back, a clean swing aimed at Roderic's shoulder. Metal clashed, sparks spat. The crowd gasped. Kilian pressed forward, no longer patient. He remembered the cell Elena had been thrown into, the grave that held their daughter, the nights Adrian cried from the fever. He pressed and pressed, left, right, overhead. Rodrik parried, grimacing. "You always fight hardest when you're losing," Rodrik hissed. "I'm not fighting for a title anymore," Kilian said, teeth clenched. "I'm fighting for a life I threw away because of you." Roderik's smirk broke. He twisted, brought the hilt of his sword up, slamming it against Kilian's side. Kilian staggered, coughing. Blood filled his mouth. Above, Elena flinched. "Stay down," Rodrik sneered. "You're good at that." But Kilian rose. Slowly. "Not this time." He lifted his blade again. The crowd began to chant. Low at first, but rising truth. 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 Roderik's face hardened. He charged, blade slicing through the rain. Kilian blocked once, twice, then ducked low and drove his shoulder into his brother's chest, knocking him back. The crowd roared. Rodrik scrambled to his feet, furious now. His next strike was wild, a reckless arc fueled by rage. Kilian caught it, twisted, their blades locked. And Kilian whispered, "She still cries at night because of you." He shoved hard. Rodrik lost balance. In one breath, Kilian spun, disarmed him, and brought the edge of his sword to Roderik's throat. The crowd went silent. Rodrik looked up, panting. "Do it. End it." Kilian's hand trembled. Above, Elena watched, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it might shake the stone beneath her. Kale stirred in her arms. "What's happening, Mama?" Elena couldn't speak. "I should kill you," Kilian said, voice shaking. "For the lies. For her suffering. For what you stole from our sons." Roderik's face twitched. "Then do it." Kilian hesitated. His sword pressed deeper. Then he looked up, at Elena, Kale, at Adrian, and slowly, he lowered the blade. "No," he said. "You don't get to die like a martyr. You live with what you did. Stripped, forgotten, alone." The regent stood. By the old laws, the victor's word becomes truth. Kilian turned to the court, his chest heaving. "These are my sons," he said. "And Elena, she is not a stain. She is the only part of me worth saving." The chamber erupted, some in applause, others in shock, but none louder than Adrian, who grinned through tears and shouted, "He won!" Elena's breath escaped her in a sob she didn't mean to release. Kilian turned back to Rodrik, who now knelt in the mud, defeated. The guards came, dragged him from the ring. Kilian looked up one last time, and for the first time in years, Elena smiled. Not just with her lips, but with her heart. Silence followed, not of fear but awe. Kilian stood in the center of the yard, soaked and bloodied, his chest heaving with the aftermath of rage and restraint. His sword hung loosely at his side, tip resting against the earth. His hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of what he had just done. Above, Elena stepped back from the balcony railing, her fingers still clutching the stone as if letting go might send her reeling. Kale had fallen asleep in her arms, unaware of what his father had chosen. But Adrian stared down with a gaze sharp and filled with something new respect. Kilian's eyes rose to them, and for a moment, his knees nearly buckled, not from pain, but from the flood of emotion crashing through him. The court for once said nothing, until Lord Veller rose from his seat with surprising slowness. "Let the record show," his voice echoed, "that Lord Kilian has defended his claim, not only with blade but with restraint. The court honors his bloodline. The children, Adrian and Kale, are to be entered into the royal archives as rightful heirs to House Belverin." A murmur spread. Nobles whispered, some with approval, some with veiled disgust. Elena exhaled, a hand over her heart. Her legs gave slightly under her, but she steadied herself. "They believe him," she whispered. "They finally believe him." "No," Adrian said. "They believe us now." They met Kilian at the gates. Elena was the first to reach him. She didn't speak. She didn't ask if he was all right. She simply walked up to him, touched his face, and said softly, "It's done." His eyes brimmed. He reached up, covering her hand with his. "Are you afraid?" She shook her head. "Not anymore." He looked to Adrian, who stood with his chin high, proud and silent. "You protected them," Kilian said. "I watched you. And Kale, he's resting. I think he knew you'd win." Kilian let out a shaky breath. "I wasn't sure." "You were sure enough," Adrian said. Then, after a pause, "You didn't kill him, even when you could." Kilian looked down at his stained hands. "Killing him would have fed the fire. I needed to end it another way." Adrian nodded slowly. "Mama always says truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to survive." Kilian blinked back the burn in his eyes. "She's right." Elena watched them quietly, then looked toward the palace doors where scribes were already emerging with scrolls. Servants whispering instructions, nobles murmuring invitations. "We need to leave the capital soon," she said. Kilian turned. "Leave, this isn't home." "Not for them," she said gently. "They don't need gold halls and thrones. They need quiet mornings, dirt under their fingernails, trees they can climb." He smiled faintly. "A cottage." She tilted her head. "You remember." "I never forgot." He turned to the scribe approaching. "Send word to the regent. We will return in 3 moons for formal ceremonies. But until then, I am not to be summoned." The man blinked. "My lord, I have other vows to keep," Kilian said. "More sacred than parchment." Elena's eyes shone, not with tears this time, but peace. They rode slowly out of the city, no longer hiding. People bowed as they passed. Some stared in silence. Others cheered. But none of it mattered to Kilian. Not the praise, not the awe. Only the steady beat of Kale's breathing behind him, the gentle sound of Elena's voice as she told Adrian a story to keep him awake, and the horizon that promised something new. Freedom. They reached the edge of the woods by nightfall. Kilian dismounted and turned toward Elena. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he said, "but I want to build something that does." She walked to him, lifted his hand, and placed it over her heart. "Then start here." He looked at her, the forest at their backs, the road before them. And for the first time since he had cast her away, he didn't feel lost. He felt home. He was walking behind Elena and the boys, watching as Adrian tried to teach Kale how to skip stones across a shallow creek. Kale's first few throws barely made a splash, but his laughter rang like a bell, bright and clean. Kilian closed his eyes at the sound. He'd missed so many of those moments. Years stolen by silence, by pride. But now, here they were. Still fragile, still healing, but together. "Come try," Kale called. Kilian opened his eyes. He walked to the water's edge and knelt beside his son. Kale handed him a smooth, flat stone. "Adrian says you used to be a knight." Kilian smiled. "Something like that. Can knights skip stones?" "The best ones can." He flicked his wrist. The stone glided once, twice, then sank. Kale's eyes widened. "You're almost the best one." "Almost," Kilian laughed. "Uncle Varn can make it skip 4 times. Kilian groaned. "Of course he can." Adrian joined them, arms crossed. "You're not bad, for someone who used to wear a crown." "I didn't wear it well," Kilian murmured. "But you wear this better," Adrian said, gesturing to the woods. "To the family." Kilian looked at him. "Do you mean that?" The boy shrugged. "You're here. That's more than I ever thought you'd be." Elena watched from where she was gathering wild herbs nearby, her fingers brushing through tall grass. She wasn't smiling, but her expression was no longer guarded, just quiet, present. That night, they lit a fire near the edge of the glade and pitched a small tent for the boys. Elena sat wrapped in her shawl, hair loose, eyes turned toward the flames. Kilian sat across from her, knees drawn up, a cup of tea cooling between his palms. "I've never felt more afraid," he said suddenly. She looked at him. "In the court, no. Here." She didn't respond, just waited. "I know how to face blades, how to give orders, how to ride into war," he said, voice soft. "But I don't know how to make up for birthdays I missed." or sleepless nights I wasn't there to hold them through. Elena stirred the fire with a stick. There's no way to make up for it. I thought as much. But there's a way to begin again, she added. And you've already started. He looked into the flames. Sometimes I dream of her, the one we lost. Elena's hand froze over her lap. She's always by a river, he continued. Always smiling. I never see her face clearly, just the shape of her hands. Small, delicate, like Kale's. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. I talk to her. When I'm alone, I tell her about the herbs I'm planting. About her brothers. About you. Kilian turned to her. I wish I'd buried her with you, he said. I should have fought harder to find you. She's at peace, Elena whispered. I feel it. They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them, the stars slowly unveiling above. Then Elena said, almost too quietly, I never hated you as much as I pretended to. Kilian looked up sharply. I wanted to, she continued. It would have made it easier. But even when I cursed your name, I still remembered the way you looked at me. Back before everything fell apart. Before fear ruled you. I remember how you smiled that day in the market, he said. It broke me, and I didn't even know why. She met his gaze. Because you saw what it could have been. A long silence stretched between them, heavy with things they could never undo. But then, Kale's soft voice from the tent, Mama, Elena stood quickly, crossing to him. I'm here, love. Will Papa be here in the morning too? Kilian rose, stepping closer. I'll be here every morning, he said. If you want me to be. Kale's small smile appeared. Okay. Elena looked back at Kilian, her eyes shining with something raw. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something that lived beside it. You should get some rest, she said softly. He nodded, turned to his bedroll near the fire. But before lying down, he looked back at her one last time. Thank you, he said. For what? For letting me start again. She didn't answer. She didn't need to, because when the firelight flickered against her face, he saw what he hadn't dared hope to see again. A flicker of the woman who once believed in him, and the man he might still become if he didn't let go of her this time. He rose quietly, careful not to wake the others, and walked toward the edge of the camp. The trees loomed tall, but he welcomed their shadows now. A twig cracked behind him. He turned. Elena stepped into the clearing, shawl wrapped around her, hair catching the faint blue light of the coming sun. You always rise before the birds, she murmured. I'm afraid the night might steal this all back if I sleep too deeply, he answered, his voice low. She studied him. You still don't believe it's real. I do, he said, but I don't believe I deserve it. She walked closer. You don't get to decide that. He chuckled softly. That's what I'm afraid of. Silence bloomed between them, not bitter, not cold, but filled with something too tender to name. She reached out, touched his arm. Come with me, she said. He followed. They walked deeper into the woods until the trees opened into a quiet glade. Dew-kissed, silent, and untouched by anyone but them. Elena knelt near the base of an old tree, her fingers gently brushing away leaves and moss. Kilian's breath caught. Beneath her hand was a small stone, smooth, unmarked, and sacred. She's here, Elena whispered. This is where I laid her. He dropped to his knees beside her, eyes fixed on the stone. I thought it should be somewhere peaceful, she said. Somewhere she'd never be forgotten, even if no one ever knew. Kilian reached forward, his fingers trembling as they touched the earth. He couldn't speak. His throat tightened. I used to talk to her, Elena said, barely louder than the wind. About you, about how I hoped. Even if you never returned, a part of you would live in the good things. In the wind, in the rain, in their laughter. He bowed his head, overcome. I failed her, he whispered. No, Elena said. You weren't there, but she still had you, in their eyes, in every word I spoke to her. He looked at her, grief etched across his face. I don't know how to say goodbye. You don't have to, she said. You only have to promise you'll live in a way that honors her. He closed his eyes and nodded. Then, slowly, he reached into the leather pouch at his belt and pulled something out. A small ribbon, faded blue, frayed at the edges. I kept this, he said, all these years. From the day I met you, the one you wore in your hair. I couldn't let it go. Elena's eyes filled. He placed it gently beside the stone. I want her to have it, he said. She should know where we began. A breeze swept through the glade, rustling the trees softly. Elena reached for his hand. He didn't flinch this time. He held it tightly. They sat in silence until the light changed. The sun rising gently above the trees, casting golden warmth over the grave, over them. When they returned to camp, the boys were just waking. Adrian rubbed his eyes. Where'd you go? Kilian crouched beside him. To say hello to your sister. Kale sat up, blinking. Can we say hello too? Not today, Elena said softly. But soon, when the time is right. Kilian watched her, and something in him settled. Not a release of sorrow, but an understanding that sorrow could live beside peace. That they didn't cancel each other out. That maybe this was how healing began. He looked at his sons, now smiling, stretching, asking about breakfast and wild berries and how long until they got to swim in the stream again. And he looked at Elena, whose eyes no longer carried the same wall of distance. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a man pretending to be whole. He simply felt like a father. And for him, that was everything. Now, Kilian walked behind her, carrying Kale in his arms while Adrian chased a butterfly just ahead. There was laughter, there was warmth, and for a moment, everything felt still. Not frozen, just still, like time itself was pausing to let them breathe. But the stillness broke. The sound was subtle at first, the distant beat of hooves, slow and deliberate. Kilian stopped. His eyes narrowed, turning toward the direction of the sound. His grip around Kale tightened slightly. Elena noticed. What is it? He gently lowered Kale to the ground. Stay with your brother. Adrian sensed the shift in the air and grabbed Kale's hand, pulling him behind him without needing to be told. Elena stepped closer to Kilian. You hear that too, don't you? Yes. His voice was quiet, steady, too steady. They're not riding like hunters. They're riding like messengers who want to be seen. Within moments, 3 figures emerged from the path. Cloaked in deep green, the sigil of the royal house of Verlin stitched into their shoulders. The lead rider dismounted, pulling back her hood. She was older, with silver threaded into her dark braid, but her stance was strong and proud. Elena of the Forest, the woman said, her voice formal but not cold. Lord Kilian. Elena's eyes narrowed. What do you want? We come with message, not threat, the woman said. She reached into her cloak and held out a scroll, bound in dark red wax. By decree of the Queen's Council, and at the word of the royal regent himself. Kilian took the scroll and broke the seal. His eyes scanned the words, and slowly his expression changed. Confusion, then disbelief, then something close to grief. Elena stepped forward. What is it? He handed her the scroll. She read. Her breath left her. They want custody, she whispered. The words were written plainly, but the meaning was dagger-sharp. Due to the legitimate lineage of the twin heirs to House Belverin, and their potential claim to succession, the council hereby issues a summons of guardianship review. The children are to be brought before the court within 10 days for formal placement within noble care. They mean to take them from us? Kilian said, voice tight. The rider spoke again. The council is divided. There are those who believe your choices, both of you, reflect instability. That the children would be safer under more structured guidance. Elena's voice cut through the air. They think nobles can raise them better than their own mother. They think titles raise children, Kilian said bitterly. Not love. Adrian, who had been listening from a short distance, stepped forward. They want to take us. Elena turned instantly. No one's taking you. Kilian crouched in front of him. You remember what I said to you, that I would never leave again? Adrian nodded slowly. Then believe me when I tell you, I will fight them again. with blade or with word, whatever it takes. Kale's small voice trembled. But they're the Queen's people. Kilian looked at him. Even queens are wrong sometimes. The rider approached carefully. You are within your rights to contest. But you must understand the council is powerful. And this decision is not just about your children. It's about the message your story sends. What message? Elena snapped. The woman met her eyes. That a woman they called a traitor can rise above shame. That a disgraced duke can reject power and still hold influence. Threatens what they've built. Kilian stood slowly. Then let them be threatened. The woman nodded, solemn. I hope you're ready, because once you step into that hall again, it won't be a duel of swords. He clenched his jaw. Then I'll learn a new kind of weapon. The riders turned and left, hooves fading into the trees. Elena folded the scroll and stood in silence for a long moment. Then she said, They won't survive in that world, Kilian. They'll crush Kale's quiet heart. Turn Adrian into something hard. I won't let it happen. You say that with certainty. But this time we might lose more than each other. He stepped toward her, voice low, raw. Then I will burn down the court before they lay a hand on them. She looked into his eyes and believed him, not because of the fire in his voice, but because of the fear beneath it. He wasn't just angry. He was afraid of being powerless again. She reached for his hand. Then we go back. Together. Again. His fingers closed around hers. And from the path behind them, Adrian called out, If they want us, we'll make them earn it. Kale, still clutching a flower he'd picked, looked up and whispered, Mama will win. Papa too. Kilian looked at them and whispered more to himself than anyone else. Not again. I won't fail them again. This time they wouldn't just fight to be heard. They'd fight to belong. This time there were no cheering crowds, no whispers of awe, only silence as the guards opened the gate and let them pass through the iron jaws of the city. Inside the cabin, Kale sat curled into Elena's side, his fingers clutching the hem of her cloak. Adrian sat across from them, his eyes hard and fixed on the window, watching every building, every guard, every shadow. Kilian sat beside Adrian, silent, his hand resting near the hilt of his sword even though he wasn't wearing armor. His mind was already inside the council chamber, imagining every face that would be waiting, every word they would twist. Elena broke the silence. You should let me speak first. Kilian looked at her. They'll try to silence you. Then let them try, she said. Let them see a woman who didn't die when they tried to erase her. He didn't argue. The carriage stopped. A knock at the door. Kilian reached for Kale's hand. Stay close to your mother, no matter what. Kale nodded, small and wide-eyed. The doors opened. They stepped out into the courtyard of the High Court. The same stone where Elena had once stood accused. The same walls that had echoed with her shame. Now, she returned on her feet, with her sons beside her, and the man who had once condemned her, now walking at her side. Inside, the hall was full. The 12 council members sat high on their thrones, cloaked in regal silence. Nobles from every house lined the benches. Scribes waited with ink and parchment. Every pair of eyes turned toward them. The regent stood. Lord Kilian, he began, Lady Elena, and the heirs, Kale and Adrian. You've answered the summons. We've come to stop a theft, Kilian said calmly. Veller raised a hand. You were summoned for a review of guardianship, not accusation. The council must weigh the interests of the realm. The realm, Elena interrupted, has no claim over what it abandoned. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Careful, Lady Elena, said a stern woman on the left. You stand before the highest seat of justice. And I survived it once already, she said. Kilian stepped forward. You want to know if we're fit to raise our children? Then ask them. Not the council. Them. Murmurs. Veller narrowed his eyes. You would submit your sons to questioning before the court. Elena turned to Adrian. You don't have to do this if you're afraid. I'm not afraid, Adrian said. He stepped forward, small but unshaken, facing the highest authority in the land without trembling. "Ask what you want," he said. A noblewoman leaned forward. "Do you feel safe with your parents?" Adrian's answer came without hesitation. "Safer than I ever felt in this city." A man on the right asked, "Are you taught the ways of your house of nobility?" "I'm taught what matters," Adrian replied. "Truth, loyalty, strength that protects, not controls." Veller's voice cut through.